Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another battle to the death for you. Today we have the Rick Hinderer Design Zero Tolerance 0562 tie versus the knife that inspired it, the actual Hinderer XM-18 3.5-inch slicer. This happens to be a Gen 6 model. As always, I want to thank Southern Edge Knife Works for sponsoring these battles to the death. They often supply me a lot of knives for these. They make them possible. If you like these videos, you want to show them some love, go to southernedgeknifeworks.com. Use the code SDSEK at checkout. You get 50% off and free shipping in the continental U.S. And if you live outside of that, it's only $15, which is not bad at all, especially if you live in, like, France or something. It's really cheap shipping. So go check them out. All right. Let's get to it. Why am I doing this? Yeah, it's another Hinderer video. I know I've become kind of a channel full of Hinderer stuff. I slightly apologize for that, but I like them. A lot of these ones you see me review are mine. I'm a fan of the company. But the number one question I get from Hinderer people, number one Hinderer related question I get, because like I said, people do kind of look at me like as a Hinderer guy, is should I spend the $425 on an actual XM-18, or should I save $145 and spend $280 on an 0562 tie? Or you can save $165 and get the 0562 with the carbon handle. That's not really as popular as the 0562 tie is since it came out. Maybe it's just because it's newer. I don't know. It's also a little bit lighter in the tie, which doesn't seem to make any sense. You think the carbon would be lighter, but this is just really, really heavily milled out. So they leave more carbon in for structural reasons. So the 0562 carbon is just a skosh heavier. But I'm getting off track. So that's one of the number one questions I get. So that's the number one reason why I'm doing this. Second is, as recently as maybe 3 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, there was a common thing you see on forums and whatnot saying that ZT makes better Hinderers than Hinderer does, because he designs a lot of stuff for zero tolerance. In addition to making his own knives, he designs a lot of stuff for zero tolerance and Kershaw. And people would say, oh, the ZT built ones are better. That may have been true up until a couple years ago. That pretty much with the advent of this new tri-way pivot that lets you run it on bearings or phosphor bronze washers or the Teflon like it used to run on, I don't think that's true anymore. I think that these are great. And also I think they took a little step up in quality, not a giant one, but a little bit one. They didn't need to take a giant one. And I think the small step in quality they've made has really, really shown through. I wouldn't say that's true anymore, but the best way to figure it out is to do a little battle to the death. Do you save the money? Is the ZT better made? Let's get to it. How do we decide that? We have 7 categories as usual: design and aesthetics, quality, blade, ergonomics, carry, deployment, and value. Everybody gets a point for each category they win. At the end, we add them all up and we pick a winner. And there are no ties in this one. I will say, spoiler alert, no ties. A lot of times I do have a tie here and there category and people get upset. There are no ties in this one. I was able to make pretty good decisions in each, and ones I'm very, very confident with in each category. So let's talk about these knives individually before we get started, though. We'll pull out the XM-18 first. So this is definitely an icon in the EDC knife community world, in the knife community in general. It's been around for a long time. They used to just run on Teflon washers. The action wasn't awesome all the time. Sometimes the detent was a bit lazy, but they were still super tough built knives, and everybody loved and respected them. Rick Hinderer has a very vast experience in the first responder community, and it's kind of designed with all that in mind. It's always just been a tough, great knife, but they were really expensive on the secondary back in the day. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, you would find one of the XM-18s would be reselling on the secondary market for like $1,000. Now this one is $425. They're pretty readily available. I chose this version because it is definitely the most readily available. And this is the slicer, 3.5-inch with the forward finger choil. You can find these all over the place. It's not too hard to find one if you want to get one. Everybody charges the same price. I will say that they do make a no choil version, which would be even closer to the 0562 in overall look, but those are pretty few and far between. I couldn't find one at the time of doing this at all, and when they come, they go really, really quick. There's also a flipperless version. Yes, I do very much want a choilless, no flipper version of this, but who knows if I'll ever get my hands on one. That's kind of a grail that I'm chasing right now, I think. But yeah, just a totally timeless design. I think the quality's gone up recently, and that tri-way pivot in the Gen 6 just kind of changes the game for them. That's why they're making more knives. That's why they're more readily available. But let's do some stats. We have an overall length of 8¼ inches, blade length, as the name would indicate, 3.5 inches, blade thickness, the usual Hinderer 0.16 inches, handle thickness of 0.54, and a weight of not too bad, 5.6 ounces. It's definitely not a lightweight, but it's not too bad. Now let's talk about the 0562 tie. As I said, this is at least the second version of the 0562. There may be other ones. Two available right now are the carbon and this tie. I was really debating on getting an 0562 until the tie came out. I just like the look of it, and I hope you can see inside how milled out that thing is. There's just a lot of milling going on in there, so it makes it a bit lighter than even the carbon one. It is very, very, very similar in overall shape to the XM-18. There's an extra little finger hump in there, but other than that, the blade shape, like I said, especially if you're comparing it against the choiless version, very, very true to what the Hinderer one is. Pretty unique pocket clip, definitely not a Hinderer style pocket clip. You have a nice deep carry clip. The tie version has all this blacked out hardware, which I like the looks of. Some people seem to not like it much, but I like it quite a bit. 20 CV steel, as the name would indicate, full titanium. It's a really well-built knife. I've really, really enjoyed it. You guys have seen this on this channel a whole lot. It's probably one of my most carried knives. I really, really do enjoy it. And I'm very excited and also worried about this test because I love them both. So let's do some specs as we did before. We have an overall length, again, 8¼ inches, blade length, again, 3.5 inches, blade thickness, again, 0.16 inches, handle thickness, slightly thinner at 0.51 inches, and weight, again, slightly lighter at 5.45 ounces. So now, let's get in the nitty-gritty. Let's get into our scoreable categories. Design and aesthetics. This is one that's always tough to judge when you're judging against a Hinderer, because one of their many mottos is make it your own. And if you buy an actual real XM-18, yeah, you can absolutely do that. There are so many different scale options from the factory, from the secondary, all the hardware from the factory. You can get different colors. You get copper, bronze, all different colors, different materials, everything, pocket clips, a whole bunch of different ones. Even the filler tabs you can get in a different color. The lock bar disc you can get in different, there's so many options to customize one of these. And I have I have one other one, I'm sorry, this is the same one, but it doesn't normally look like this. I almost thought I had three for a second there. I was really excited for a moment, and I've disappointed myself. But this usually runs on a titanium scale that removes the liner with a warhog pattern on it. And then I have another one with another actual Hinderer scale, but that is a different color than what it came with. And it's so easy to just get upgrade parts for this. So if you don't like the way yours looks when you go get it, you can change it. And that's kind of what I recommend with buying Hinderers if you're going to buy real ones. If you find one that's close to what you want, get it. Because these aren't an unavailable knife. They're pretty widely available. If you go look around right now, you're going to find an XM-18 3.5 inch slicer. It's not that hard to find one. Just get one that's close to what you want, and then you can go get another one later, because you can spend a lot of time chasing that exact one that you want, but you can upgrade it later. I didn't mean go get another one later. You can change the parts later on to make it exactly what your tiny little heart desires. And I love that about the XM-18. I will say that just sitting here stock as they come, I do maybe like the look of the 0562 tie just a little bit better. The 0562 carbon I was never really in love with. The 0562 tie I like a little bit better. I like the stone wash on here. I think it looks good. I like the black hardware. Some people don't, but I really like it. And just the blade has a really nice finish on it. As they sit here, maybe I would slightly prefer the 0562 tie, but not enough to discount the fact that later on I can make this look like whatever the hell I want to make it look like. Whether it's no cost options from the factory, because like I said, you can get this with a bronze lock side, with bronze hardware, with a myriad of different colored G10 scales. None of that costs anything. So your initial one that you buy is just going to be $425. And you just kind of choose a base to build your knife off from. And I love that. It's, like I said, owning one XM-18 is like a hobby unto itself. And I do really like that. So I have to give the win on design and aesthetics to the OG, to the XM-18, just because of the customizable factor of it. Quality. The 0562 tie is really good. I do really like it. Some people had a fit about lockup issues last year on ZTs. I've never experienced that. I've had a lot of ZTs. At the time that happened, I think I had 6 of them. And I believe in a video I was spine thwacking them and it wasn't coming loose. It was just kind of like when you spine thwack them, well, don't do that. That's dumb. And B, like all of mine wouldn't do it. I couldn't make any of them do it. But it can't be ignored. And while the ZT is really well made, you know, some people obviously did have the issue. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just think it was a bit overblown. But I have to give the win to the XM-18 because it does feel very expensive, which it is. Just when you pick one of these up, it just feels expensive. The ZT feels well worth its $280, but this just feels expensive. And I've never had a quality control issue with a Hinderer at all, and just beautifully done. Have to give the quality win to the XM-18, which I should be because it costs a lot more. So that definitely should be something that happens. Blade. This one is pretty close. It's almost identical blade shape. You have the ZT is a bit taller. It's also a bit thicker behind the edge, unfortunately, which is not a huge difference. It's only like 25 thousandths versus like like 26 thousandths versus like 24, 25. So it's not a huge difference at all. But in the end, they're both 20 CV, by the way. I don't think I ever mentioned that on the Hinderer before. It is also 20 CV, which is pretty much the blade steel you're going to find on XM-18s now. They have done some other blade steels in the past, some special editions. Like I have one that's M390, which is basically the same steel. In the past, they've used S35VN, so it depends on which one that you're getting at what time, but they seem to have pretty much settled on just doing 20 CVs is what it seems like lately. I think most of all the ones I have, except that one M390 that wasn't exclusive, are all 20 CV. But what wins it for me in the end is, part of it is the slightly thinner behind the edge. They both have pretty good factory edges, but the Hinderer's is just a little bit better. And I don't have an issue with ZT's heat treatment of 20 CV, but Hinderer's is better. It does just seem to be treated to a harder HRC and just seems to hold up just that little bit better than the ZT. So not a giant win in the blade, but definitely I'm going to call it a comfortable win for the XM-18. So now we have ergonomics. 0562 tie. I don't even need to qualify that. It's just, this is super comfortable in my hand. Now it does have the 3 humps. Maybe it won't fit your fingers, but they're all pretty generous. I don't think it's going to be a problem for anybody. The pocket clip just disappears in your hand. The jimping, the little bit that it has, lands in just the right spot. It just fits my hand so perfectly. I love the feeling of the smooth tie. Yes, this is going to be grippier. If you're a first responder type, yes, this is going to be grippier. But the reason that it loses is because it's so grippy. I think for a lot of average users, XM-18s are a bit jimptastic. You've got jimping up here, which is a problem we'll get to later. You've got jimping down here, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. Jimping down here, jimping back here. It's just very jimptastic, very textured G10. And whilst it's a very comfortable knife, not as comfortable as the 0562 tie is. So pretty easy win ergonomically to the 0562 tie. Now to the carry, which is also going to be a win for the 0562 tie, mostly just because the pocket clip. Oh, and one other factor. So you have a nice deep carry clip on the 0562 tie, Heavy Yield Wranglers Mark II, and for a big giant knife, it's definitely not visible in your pocket at all, which is great. It's still a big knife. When you go past there, you're definitely going to notice that flipper tab, but there's no jimping on it, so it doesn't really bother me at all. It doesn't take up a ton of room in the pocket, but a fair bit. And yeah, it's pretty easy one here. Also, we'll bring out the the XM-18, and you can see it doesn't carry as deep, which that's not the end of the world. These knives are pretty big. It's not something on a smaller knife or something that tries to be a gentleman's knife, I worry more about how discreet it is. Nothing discreet about an XM-18. That doesn't bother me a lot. I do like the deep carry on the 0562 tie better. But the main thing that makes it win is just all that jimping again. When you go past, there's a lot of jimping on the flipper tab, and it'll scratch your little pinky finger, and I don't want my little pinky to get scratched. So got to go pretty easy win on the carry to the 0562 tie. Deployment. This one is really close because these are both running on bearings. The 0562 tie deployment is excellent. I love the sound it makes. It definitely sounds better than the Hinderer. Just that noise. Not that the Hinderer sounds bad. Still sounds pretty good. Yeah, it still sounds pretty good. But I am going to slightly give the win to the Hinderer. It's a close one, but it's mostly just because I can still use the thumb studs, which are actually not thumb studs. They're blade stops, but can't do that on the 0562. I've never been able to pull that off. Can't do it. My thumbs won't make it work. Maybe some people can. Both pretty equal on the detent. It's just that extra little thing. I almost still gave it to the 0562 because one thing that's annoying is if you're using the flipper tab, your finger is going to land on this milling here, but on all the jimping, again, I keep using the word jimping. But I've gotten used to it enough. You saw how I just did it there. You just use the tip of it. That's all you have to use, and then you don't touch it. So now that I've gotten more used to it, I still enjoy flipping this and playing with this just a little better because, again, I can thumb stud open it. And that's why they make them with no flippers sometimes. You can find a flipperless XM-18. So deployment has to go to the XM-18 narrowly. Value. So 280, 425. I've pointed out a lot of the ways that I think the XM-18 is better than the 0562, but are any of them hugely dramatic? No, not really. And this is 65% of the price. I think you're getting 90%, 85%, we'll call it 87.5% of the experience of having an XM-18 for 65% of the price. And if you're just going to use it. Now, as far as all the customization and all that stuff, if you're into all that aspect of owning a Hinderer, then no, you don't get hardly any of that with this. Almost some of the ZT Hinderer designs can swap parts. The 0562 has very, very few that will swap over. But so you're losing that. But as far as the actual experience of using the knife, I have to say value goes to the 0562 tie. It's still an excellent knife. If you pull this out in front of any group of knife guys, nobody's going to look down their nose at you. It's still a really nice, pretty expensive zero tolerance. It's still a very well-built knife. It's still a very good-looking knife. It's still an excellently designed knife. It's still a very serious knife. And yeah, it's 65% of the cost. So if this was $385 or this was $300, I don't know, I might call it a tie, but at their current prices, no, got to give the win in value to the 0562 tie. But does that mean that it won? No, it didn't. It's still 4-3 for the XM-18. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I mean, I did buy the 0562 tie for the same reason a lot of people do. I had my first Hinderer was a 3-inch XM-18. I didn't really care for it that much. Just didn't work well with my hands. I know a lot of people love them, but my hands, it just didn't work great. And I thought about getting the 3.5. And then somebody said, oh, you should, if you want to know what the 3.5's like, just get an 0562 and try that. It's less expensive. And then like the next week is when this came out. So serendipity, I bought the 0562 tie. This is one of the very first ones they made. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I was very happy with it. And I was not going to get an XM-18. Now I've had 2 of them fall in my lap. Very generous gifts from one of my viewers. And I will say, since I've had the XM-18s, I do carry them more than I carry the 0562 tie. Part of that is just, honestly, knowing I have a Hinderer in my pocket. Part of it is totally just my stupid man brain knowing that I have a really nice, more expensive knife in my pocket. Absolutely, that's part of it, which If you don't care about branding and branding doesn't make you feel better in your life and has no value to you, then again, get the 0562 tie and don't think twice about it. I also like the customization factor of the XM-18. Both of mine are very, very customized. Like I said, I had to return this back to its stock state in order to do this review. So I enjoy that. I get a little bit more joy out of the XM-18, but it's not a dramatically better knife than the 0562 tie, and the 0562 tie is cheaper. So I'm going to say, for me, in my scoring, XM-18. But if you buy an 0562 tie, don't feel bad about it. It's an awesome, awesome knife. So that is the end of this, and that is how I'm going to leave it. And I feel pretty good about this. I think I'm going to get a lot of nasty comments about it, but we will see. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Brian. Have a good one.